Welcome to another episode of Behind the Now. Today I chat with writer and director Gaubrielle Gorman. Gaubrielle recently graduated from UCLA's School of Film and Television with a concentration in screenwriting, and she currently works in the digital marketing department at S1E Pictures. Gaubrielle's recent work includes directing Mr. Ewing, a short documentary for Amazon Fire TV, editing and directing the viral PSA Vote for the Future, and Dear America, her short film that was featured on PBS. Gaubrielle was also the recipient of the Aaron Sorkin Writing Award, which Aaron Sorkin presented to her at the Westflix Film Festival. Listen in to learn more about Gaubrielle's creative journey, as well as her beautiful advice for all budding and accomplished filmmakers. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm so excited to talk with you.
Yeah, great to be here.
So you went to UCLA, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. I did too. That's so cool. So walk me through your pathway of getting into directing and screenwriting. Like, where did this come from? I know you were also doing it at an early age, like in high school, you're already making films, which is amazing. But how was your upbringing and what fostered that?
So I like to say that I was I loved screenwriting and directing from a very young age. And the proof is in all of like my little journals and diaries from when I was younger, and like the little things I would shoot on I had like this Hannah Montana camcorder.
Mm-hmm.
I would make like these little scenes with my dolls and like stop motion animation, all that stuff. And just like writing screenplays and all that stuff. But I never really like thought it was a path that I could actually take, because I didn't see a lot of women there and people of color. And I feel like, when you're younger, Hollywood just feels so inaccessible. Mm-hmm. I mean, even now. So it wasn't until like about high school, like 10th grade, where I really started to pursue it. And it was kind of like my poetry that got me into it. Because I don't consider myself a poet, but like in the poems that I write, they're always very vivid and graphic. And I was like, you know what, New Year's resolution, let's just turn this into something finally. And so I did that, fell in love with the process, and then, applied to many schools, and UCLA was like the top. So
yeah, that's so amazing. So were you always writing poetry just naturally?
Yeah, I mean, poems, songs, it was just a way for me to, just kind of get in touch with my own emotions. And I'm like a visual thinker, so I oftentimes just do think in pictures.
That makes sense.
It makes it easier for me to digest them.
Okay. And what made you, so your filmmaking process starts often with a poem, I read, right?
Oh, how did you know that? Did you read that?
I think I read that or watched that somewhere. Yeah. Is that true? Tell me.
Wow. Yeah. You did some deep research. My greatest pieces have started off with writing a poem. I'm sorry, I don't know why this is letting me turn my.
That's okay.
I promise I'm not popular. Let's see. I mean, thinking back to the very first film that I made was I tend to talk about flowers and nature a lot when I'm expressing growth, and so that was about just coming into myself as a young woman and finally finding pride as a Black woman. And so I was kind of writing all about that. And then I shot that, and with another film with Dear America that I made about kind of the oppressiveness of labels that first came from a poem. And everything has kind of come from there. And it's kind of like my own, it's like a vision board for myself, or not a vision board, like a mood board. And then I see that.
Yeah. How would you explain your directing style? Like, what makes a great director? And also, this is for a documentary film, I should have clarified. So, right?
Okay. I do kind of all of it.
You do all of it. Okay.
Yeah, cool. I love scripted, actually. A lot of earlier work is on the documentary side. And then I decided junior year at UCLA to concentrate in screenwriting. And
right. Okay.
I love all of it. I think it's just about the story and what it calls for. Mm-hmm. But in terms of my directing style as a documentarian.
So either way, you can answer for both if you want. Yeah. Go for it.
I'll go for documentary.
Okay.
I think it is really important to establish a personal connection with your subject. And just to, I say subject, like treat them like humans.
Right.
So with the project for Amazon with Mr. Ewing, it was just really important to me that he always felt comfortable. And I mean, he had like such a great time. He kind of was constantly like talking about various stories and things like that, even like on lunch breaks or while we were
Mm.
just setting up. And I would like tell the sound guy, I was like, okay, just just get some of that, just make sure
Yeah.
you have it just for his because it's, you know, it's like he knew, and he actually did pass recently, but he, you know, knew that his at that point of shooting it, that like his days were numbered, and I think he felt like this strong urge to just get it all out, talk about all these things that
Mm.
he hadn't been able to express before. And I really understood that. And it's something that my mom actually pointed out to me a while ago, because I was like, Mom, like grandma's always going on and on and on and on about things. And she's like, you know, that's how old people are. Like, you know that you're going to leave, and you
Mm.
want the people around you to like, you just want to spread as much wisdom as possible. And so for me, it was
Mm.
like, if I could get anything out of that project, it wasn't about like, honestly, even hyping myself up as a director, being able to be like, oh, I did this for Amazon. It was about making sure that his story was told and that he could
Mm.
leave this earth having said what he needed to say. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, that's my directing style. It's just like really value the.
That's beautiful. I hadn't even thought of that myself. Like what your mom said, like that's a reason why, you know, and it makes total sense now. I'm like, how have I not, like, it just didn't occur to me.
Right.
Wow, that's beautiful. And so it sounds like to always have the focus on the story, obviously, and especially for a documentary, the person's story and like how they want to be um conveyed as well, right? And so it's very collaborative and you make them very comfortable. That makes sense. All
Yeah, allow
right.
them to even be a part of the creative process in a sense, like with the, so like with Dear America and other projects I did that were not really documentaries, they were like very experimental, but
Mhm.
still um, had like historical aspects or social commentary aspects, like allowing the people I was working with, even if their role was just be on camera, just being like, hey, like, do you have any ideas? Like, what are you
Mhm.
feeling? And I always like welcome that. I feel like people are usually a little bit timid or like scared to tell me what they really think, and because they think I'm just gonna like shut them down. And um, unfortunately, that is oftentimes like the culture on various sets. But for me, I really do try to welcome that, because I'd rather just like have critique or just great feedback or great idea than to go without it and then create something that could have been better. But I was like, yeah,
Yeah, and normally people come in excited about your project when they're part of it, and they have thought about it a lot and they do have these ideas. So that's really amazing to give them the space right away to be like, what do you think of this? Like, how would you want to do this? I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. So a lot, I've noticed the use of movement and dance in
mm-hmm.
your work. And how did that come about? It's so uniquely done. And then I'll ask you that first. I go for that. Uh,
I, my whole life, I've just been very involved in movement. So I was
mm.
dancing at Debbie Allen when I was
Oh my
younger,
gosh.
Washington, all of that. I did gymnastics. So I've studied like every style, from like hip hop, contemporary, ballet, like whacking, voguing, stepping, flamenco, salsa, like it goes on and on and on.
That's amazing.
And I mean, I
Wow.
love it. I think it also gives you such a beautiful window into various cultures.
Hmm.
And so it's just something that I've always naturally just wanted to bring to my work. Because it's, yeah, like I
Yeah.
said, with that whole thinking in pictures things, like honestly, words are quite difficult for me to write, but when it comes to movement, it's just something that it's already in my mind and ongoing.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. You really have taken like it seems like you're very able to take experiences or like even things you've observed and use them so effectively in your work, you know? Like I danced as well growing up, and it's interesting to think that way. Like how is that? Because it definitely does. It definitely affects how you approach your work in ways, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's so cool. Okay, awesome. The second part of that was your use of editing. How do you make decisions really? Like when you edit? Because I feel like editing, especially, it's could be very hard to just decide. And your editing, you often use very creative ways that are like things you haven't even seen before, which is amazing. Yeah, walk me through the process. Like, do you need to take a break after filming before editing to like let it be and look at it objectively, kind of? Or yeah.
Um, it really depends. If I have to take a break, it's not usually for a good reason.
Oh,
You know,
interesting. Okay.
yeah. If it's if it's something that's a little bit too close to home,
I see.
that's when I need to kind of take a break, and that's when I start to get a bit of editor's block. I've had that quite a few times, because I think editing is really just like an extension of the writing process when you think about it. And so you're going to be like adding things, taking things out, and constantly revising. And yeah, I've had times like with Dear America, just that editing process was horrifying at first, because even as I was trying to speak to my own experience, like as growing up in this world as a Black woman, going to this like all white school, I still wasn't really honest with myself, and it was still difficult for me to be vulnerable with my audience. And so that affected the editing, and it just for a while looked really just like sloppy, and like there wasn't really a central focus. And then it wasn't until the night before I had to turn it in that
oh wow, that like
that breakthrough.
Interesting. Yeah, that's sometimes it too. Like when you say, what's it called? Editing block, like writer's block, but for editing.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Editor's block.
Oh, editor's block. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes the only way through that is to like not be focused on it, like let it breathe for a second and then it comes through. But luckily that happened for you the night before. Maybe it was like the pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that happens. How do you get through that with your writing as well?
Oh yeah, with my writing, honestly, it's like 9% of the time, it's just because there's something that I need to say and I'm just not saying it. And so it's really about facing that demon or whatever that is, like opening that door that you don't want to open. That's really what it's like. It's just the fear of opening that door or that box.
Yes.
And,
wow.
So oftentimes journaling is the way to get through that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Also, I had a playwriting teacher at UCLA actually who said he used to say that writer's block just means that you've lied somewhere, like, which is interesting. And you're like what you're saying is similar. It doesn't mean you've lied, but it's like you haven't revealed some truth yet, right? Is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Wow, that's very interesting. You have such an awareness to even like think of it, to like realize that 90% of the time it's that. That's amazing.
So I just try to like in those moments pretend like, okay, no one's gonna see this, like this is just for me, because that's why I feel like my poems and the songs that I write are like my most vulnerable pieces, because I'm not writing them to be shown. And so when I get to that point in my editing process or in screenwriting, when it's like I know that it's meant for an audience, I kind of just have to trick my mind like, hey, I was just writing this for me to read 5 years from now, like what would I say?
Yes, yeah, I know, like that's also like golden, and that's across the board for all art, really. Sometimes it is like you can't have any kind of awareness sometimes of like anything other than what it is, like how, like you can't have any awareness of how it might be perceived or this or that. Like it just doesn't exist that way, because you can't please everyone. You really can't, and like with anything. So yeah. And I do think too, like the more specific you go, like the deeper you go, the more people you actually reach, rather than trying to make something like more like pleasing everyone, Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Agree.
How do you write outline wise? Like, do you do like a thorough outline? Do you follow a beat sheet? What do you do?
Yeah, I do that. I do an outline, I do a beat sheet. I never ever stick to it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard that.
But yeah, I'll oftentimes do that. I like to use note cards. And so write like each scene on there and have it all spread out. Well, that's how I used to do it. And now I'm like, let's not waste paper. So I will just have on my laptop, like all of the beats and everything. And yeah, that usually doesn't stick. I also love making playlists. I'm so crazy about that. Like one literally for each scene. I can listen to it as I'm like editing that particular scene.
Interesting. Wow.
As I'm like on a walk, I'll like listen to a song and just take the time to visualize. My walks are like where I've had a lot of my revelations. So that's it. But honestly, like, and that's why Bell Parks was so liberating, in that it really doesn't follow any particular system. I mean, it has some of those aspects, but it's really just like a young woman having fun, and every new scene was just like, hey, I really want to see her in this really hilarious situation. Okay, let's just write it.
Nice. Oh, that's so fun. What genres actually do you want to focus on like long term? Like, do you want to do across the board? Because I know you did screenwriting. So that's, yeah.
Across the board, honestly, I'm in love with like every genre. I get this question all the time, and I worry that it makes me seem like I don't have it figured out. But it's really just what the story calls for. And honestly, where I'm at emotionally, I feel like if I'm like with my series Belle Parks, that's very much like an absurdist comedy, and that's been like my life raft. It's just something that I can look forward to if I'm having a bad day. Like, I can sit down, I can write Belle Parks. I can't write other things like the first half of my screenwriting thesis, because you have to write 2 screenplays, was
I see. Okay.
it was like a psychological thriller, but also just a very depressing piece. Just all about, mental illness and all of that. And like, that was, it was something that I definitely would like to, I mean, I finished it, but I would like to go back and revisit everything. But it's difficult to work on that, when you're going through it. And so for me, I have to be very self-aware as a writer and know when, like, it's great to work on things that are personal to me, and Belle Parks is also personal to me, but I have to make sure that I'm in like a good frame of mind, and that I've done a significant amount of healing, because
to be able to like separate enough to it's hard. Like I know exactly what you mean.
It's also like, if you're thinking about, like we said, when you're thinking about the fact that, okay, it's going to go to an audience, and you're like thinking about the commercial viability and all of that, it's really difficult to also be trying to heal from it at the same time. It's like, it just, the wires get way too crossed. So
that's a good way of saying it. The wires get too crossed. I like that.
So I think that's my approach to just deciding on what genre to go to next. There was another thing I had to say, actually. This was about movement. I'm glad that
okay.
We're still recording. Just to movement, I wanted to say that like, movement and music is such a huge part of like oral based cultures. And so, like, so many cultures in Africa, and so much of Black culture is based in that. And there's so many stories that are passed down through sound and through movement. So that's kind of another reason that I try to bring that to my work, because it's to pay tribute to that lineage. And you can look at things like Beyonce's like Lemonade, no, not Lemonade, well, Lemonade too, but her homecoming performance, and like bringing stepping and seeing how that was like a form of communication, and looking at like coded songs of the Underground Railroad and how they make their way into the civil rights movement. And even today, like, it's just a beautiful, and at the same time, heartbreaking, but also really, what am I saying?
Like authentic. It's like very authentic too.
Yeah, it's just a like, very fascinating.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, and like music too. I'm like thinking, yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Everything is passed down, through words.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've been doing some research on that. I mean, we're not even, we can go through that another time. But as I say this as a screenwriter and as someone who like all I do is write, but they're not, that's not the only way to communicate a story or to preserve a culture.
Yeah, I love that. You've said such amazing things. Like, so much of what you said is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. What advice do you have for students, for high school filmmakers or students just graduating college? And I also know that you've done amazing internships. Like, how do you go about getting internships? Just what do you recommend for those students?
Okay, I'm gonna give you like 3 different answers. It's all very different.
All right, go for it.
Okay, for high school students, I would say like that is such a great time, because you are so young and the pressure isn't really on yet. It's such a great time to just experiment and explore, just make any and everything and have fun. Doesn't matter if you're shooting on your phone or a camcorder or whatever. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice, is like, that's really the time to not limit yourself, because once you start getting into like film school or just working other sets, like, you're going to have various parameters. And I think it is better for you to start off with like kind of, what is that whole phrase thing, like, limits can be taught or whatever, but it can't really be taught to.
Yeah, I know.
Reach and extend as far as you can, so I that's my advice. And for people just graduating college, shoot, I don't know. I'd say
okay. I know you're like you kind of just graduated.
Yes. Yeah. Just keep an open mind about life. That's what I learned. I always have had like a plan for myself, and a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, and like, I graduated right as the pandemic hit. So I was like, all right, we're going to have to like go off schedule. We're going off book for now, and kind of just rolling with life. I mean, still working hard and but not being so set on having like a direct course. And I found myself in a lot of like really cool places. And then as for getting like internships and all of that, I would say start early and get like feedback on your cover letter, resume, all. I mean, that seems like
right.
But really, it's really great. Like I went to just like there's this student from the UCLA Film School. She was the year above me. She had interned at like A24 and all these really cool places, and had this like resume workshop. And I went into that, and like it was like obviously none of the experience changed on my resume, but the overall layout and everything was like 10 times better. So don't be afraid to like ask your friends, or even if they're the same age as you, like if you've seen they've done really cool things, be like, hey, do you have any tips for how like the interview process or things like that? And then I'd say, yeah, I mean, in terms of like where you apply to, I think it's great to spread it out. Like, even if you know, like, oh, I just want to be a director. For me, it's like I've done editing positions, I've done like script coverage, of worked in various fields, and it'll just help you, honestly, just financially, just to have like various kind of, just in case something else doesn't work out. And then I've had times where like I've applied to, it's like college. You apply to all these reach places, and then, you know, a lot of it might not work out. And you're like, okay, I may need to start somewhere, you know, a little bit different, but it's okay because I'll grow. So I had that with my internships, where I was like thinking immediately I was going to work at like, you know, a top 5 production company, and that didn't happen. But I went to a smaller one, and I had like personalized support, and I was able to sort of grow so much more, and then prepare myself to go on to.
Yeah. And I love what you said about asking. Sometimes it's as simple as just asking someone, what's your horoscope sign? And does that mean anything to you?
I mean, like zodiac thing? That's the same.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's okay if you're like, if you don't have an awareness of this, it's like not whatever.
My friends are really into it, so I try to give it a chance. Yeah, I'm a Pisces.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, honestly, there's nothing that I've heard about, like the few times that I've looked at like TikToks or whatever about like, oh, this is what a Pisces does. Like, I haven't disagreed with anything, I'll say.
Okay, cool. Oh, so you feel like you actually are maybe like in line with it.
Yes, but I feel like I could be in line with most.
I know. I totally agree. That's so funny. And then this podcast is called Behind the Now, but I think it's really important to be the now. That's how I phrase it. But like being present. So what are ways that you personally do to stay present? However you want to answer that or interpret it. Like it doesn't have to be always intentional. Like some people meditate and do things like that, but maybe it's like not that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's something that I'm learning, and I've been almost like studying over the course of quarantine. So it's interesting you ask that, because I'm constantly asking myself that, like, okay, what does it mean to be in the present? Because I am so like, I'm so hyper focused on the future.
Right.
Almost looked like my place just shook for a second. Okay. Anyways, so what I do is, I mean, I like to go on walks a lot. I walk like every day. I'll usually do like 2 walks, and half the time I'm just trying to take in my environment. And like, usually I want to listen to music. And again, I find myself in doing that, thinking about, okay, I have this to do, I have that to do. This is where I need to be in 5 years. And then I oftentimes will just like unplug and just take in things like, okay, what do I hear? Okay, I hear the sound of a car. I hear like a cat over there. I hear, you know, some trees moving. I hear some birds. And so just, okay, how do my footsteps sound? Like, am I walking on sand? Am I walking on concrete? So I just think really simple questions like that you can ask yourself. Okay, what am I seeing? Okay, there's, you know, a mailman over there. There's someone crossing the street over there. Just really puts you in the now. And it's just a great way to kind of de-stress. So that way that
that's amazing. That's so true. And like, I love stuff like that, because it's like, no matter what is happening that day or whatever, you could always start doing that. Like you could always, like you're saying, to be also like physically in your body. But even if you're just like stuck somewhere and you can't leave, like you're in an office or something, you can do that. Like, what am I hearing right now?
Right.
You can ask those questions, which is beautiful.
Yeah. Or like a body scan too. My sister actually taught me that. Just like I go from like my toes all the way up, and just think about everything, that all the muscles that are like clenched and everything. And oftentimes it's scary. I was like, shoot, I've like been like have I've been looking crazy for like the past couple of hours because I just do that. I get so into something. My shoulders are up there, my eyebrows are here, and I'm like, okay, let's just literally. Like, I've gone to the point I've had like muscle twitches just because I'm so tense.
Yeah.
So flexible, like how I'm able to be a dancer when I'm literally that tense. So that's
yeah. And also there's ways to meditate. That's exactly what you're saying. Like you start from whatever, like your feet or your head, and you just go like through your body, and you say like you relax each part. And it's true, you become so aware of what you're like holding tension. Like I noticed too, like when I drive, just randomly I'll notice like my jaws clenched. I'm like, why? Like, like I don't need to. There's nothing. We do that all the time in ways. So that's a really good point. I love that. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, it was so nice to meet you. I'm so excited to see what's next,
Thank you.
Where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Gaubrielle Gourmand. That's a very funny account. I post a lot of Instagram stories about life. So if you're just looking for a daily laugh, there you go. And my website, I guess, which is GabrielleGourmand.weebly.com. I'm giving you entirely different names, but it's fine.
No, it's good. It's good. Well, we have it because people might like listen at the end. They want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like everything. I'm about to delete my Twitter account. So
okay. Okay, cool. Thank you. Cool. Well, it was so good to meet you. You're so amazing.
It was great meeting you as well.
Thank you so much for doing it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.